Welcome to Maxine Talk Shows. And today we are very honored to have two speakers with us, whereby the first speaker is Mr. Isham Jalil, who is currently in Selangor Barisan National Information Chief. Welcome, Mr. Isham. On the mic. Mr. Isham, you have on the mic. Okay. Together with us, we also have Dr. O. San, the Principal Advisor for Pacific Research Center of Malaysia. And today we are going to discuss the topic of Parliament and emergency. Do we still have a democracy? Malaysian Parliament was suspended in January 2020 after the Prime Minister Mahathir bin Muhammad Yassin, also known as Muhyiddin Yassin, declared a state of emergency over COVID-19. Yang di-Pertuan Agong has issued 3 statements on the matter, whereby the King urged the Parliament should be reconvened as soon as possible. And Mr. Hisham, you want to test your mind again before I posted the question to you? Mr. Hisham? Okay, while Mr. Hisham is settle his technical issue, we invite Dr. O. Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, but you have to rephrase your question because I was busy trying to help Mr. Isham.
I see. Okay, the first question I'm going to ask Doctor is whether the King has the power to recall the parliaments under the Federal Constitution.
Now, the King's power to recall Parliament on His Majesty's own volition, it's somewhat debatable. I mean, when we are talking about when there's an emergency, and that is because while the constitutional provision does say that the King may convene Parliament at a date that His Majesty considers convenient and so on. There are other constitutional provisions which say essentially to the extent that other than, for example, appointing Prime Minister, dissolving Parliament, or as we said, declaring or proclaiming emergency, the King would actually have to act on the advice of the Prime Minister. And that is to say, essentially, the King has to follow the Prime Minister's advice. Now, it's very debatable nowadays because this has essentially not happened before. That under an emergency, usually you would have, for example, in previous emergencies after 1969 and so on, the government of the day would ask the King to proclaim an emergency, and then at the soonest possible time frame, the government of the day would ask the King to convene Parliament. But this government, of course, did not do that. We had an emergency since early January, but for almost half a year now, we don't have any sitting of Parliament whatsoever. Laws are passed by, direct promulgation or proclamation of ordinance. So there are, I think, at least these two schools of thought. Namely, number one, that the King could indeed convene Parliament proactively. But there's also another school of thought, and that I think is subscribed by our Attorney General, that even during an emergency, the King must still act upon the advice of the Prime Minister. I think ultimately, if we need to resolve these differences, I think there is a constitutional provision whereby the King could refer such constitutional question to our federal court. I mean, we of course have not come to that stage, but that is one possible resolution. Yeah, thank you.
I see. Okay.
Can Maxine? No? Can
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Now
can
we
hear
can
you.
hear you. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So what about Mr. Isham? Your view on this?
um about the proclamation of emergency, whether the king has power to ask the
Recall the
government.
parliament. Yes, under the federal constitution.
Yeah, I've written about this, and I think yes. The answer is for me characterily yes, because we are in a situation that we have never been before, and you see, like Dr. O said just now, that there are multiple interpretations to the constitution that we have. Now you see, the constitution is overarching, but the constitution is not exhaustive, you see. So it doesn't cover every single thing that is happening in the country. For example, it has provision to appoint the prime minister for the king to remove the prime minister, for example. So it must be done through any situation that we are facing every day that is not stated in the constitution must be done through interpretation. Now, there are two ways to read the constitution. Number one, the constitution can be read literally. So if the matter in hand that we're facing is clearly stated in the constitution, then you must follow it. There is no two way about it. But if the matter is not clearly stated, then you must interpret it, not literally because it's not stated, but you must go about it purposively. Purposively means that you must interpret it to what is intended by the writer of the Constitution. So, for example, to the question that people are asking whether the king has to listen to the advice of the prime minister or not. Although there are multiple of opinions here, some say that in during emergency the king must listen to the advice of prime minister no matter what, which is stated under Article 40 of the Constitution. But I don't think the writer of the Constitution intended that the king has to listen to the prime minister no matter what, even if the prime minister doesn't have the majority support in parliament. You see, so in the balance of power or in the separation of power, 300 years ago Montesquieu wrote about it in The Spirit of Law, and then Bagehot. So it says that we want to check and balance power. We don't want the power to be concentrated in one person, so that no arbitrary and discretionary exercise of power and so on and so forth. So this spirit of law that we're talking about, that the writer of the Constitution in 1956 or 1957 in Malaysia. So what they don't want is that the power to be concentrated in one party, in this particular case is the prime minister or executive, to be exercised when he doesn't have majority in parliament. So if we read the constitution that way, then that's why I say categorically that I don't think the king has to listen to the prime minister in the case that he doesn't have the majority. So we have never been in this situation before, where we have the emergency, we have the darurat. At the same time, we have the pandemic right now, and at the same time, we have a prime minister who is hanging to power, and that his support in parliament is not sure. Nobody knows. Nobody knows currently how many numbers that he has in parliament. So that is why I wrote in my article that is no matter what the AG says in his statement about it, that there are situations where the king not necessarily has to listen to the prime minister in the cases where the prime minister himself, is not straightforwardly legitimate, or if he doesn't have the majority support in parliament. So we don't want to create precedents here in the future where if someone obtains power and becomes a prime minister, and then suddenly along the way he loses power, and to maintain power, he declares emergency and wants the king to listen to him. So we don't want to create this precedent. And definitely, this is not the spirit that the writers of the Constitution meant it to be when they write the Constitution. So, ironically, constitutions are there to check and balance originally 400 years ago during the Bills of Rights in England. And like I said just now, during Montesquieu time in 1748, it was written to check and balance the power of the king. But now we have a situation where we need the king to check and balance the power of the executive in case the executive, overrun its power or doesn't have the majority anymore, but still want to hang on to power using whatever apparatus and whatever instruments that he has. But definitely, we need the king and the royal institution to be the last line of defense of democracy in this country, so that we don't have any one person doing whatever he wants with the power that he has, although he doesn't have the support of the parliament and the people anymore. That's my comment.
I see. So very obviously, Mr. Isham does not agree that the king has to act on the advice of the government, come to the issue of to reconvene the parliament. So what about your view, Dr. O? Dr. O, you have to unmute the mic.
Sorry, I think we all have that problem. Well, for me, actually, convening parliament or not is not the operative or crucial question during our, shall we say, political crisis at the moment. For me, whether to extend the emergency, I think that is the key and crucial question. Because as we discussed just now, the prime minister, the government of the day, they have tremendous power under the emergency, right? They could proclaim law directly, bypassing parliament and so on. Now, there could be various scenarios during an emergency. For example, let's say tomorrow, Mr. Anwar and Mr. Isham's party boss, namely Zahid, let's say they go to meet the king tomorrow and they conclusively demonstrate that they do have the parliamentary majority, right? Well, then what? If there's no emergency, then the king is constitutionally bound to ask Muhyiddin, well, they demonstrated majority. Do you have majority? And if not, either Muhyiddin will have to step down or he would have to ask the king to call for election, which is unlikely because now there is the serious pandemic, right? But well, during emergency, Muhyiddin, well, could perhaps do it some other way, right? He could, for example, taking a lesson from Dr. Mahathir, saying, "Hey, why don't I form this Mageran, the National Operations Council, with me being the director and so on." Well, that is an advice, you see. The Attorney General said the king has to act on such advice. Does that mean if Muhyiddin says he would like to form a Mageran and the king would have to definitively agree to that, even though it is very likely that Muhyiddin has already lost his parliamentary majority? Now, those would be the so-called constitutional crisis, right? And so if we take the interpretation of the Attorney General literally, it would appear that the king would have to act on Muhyiddin's advice and form this Mageran, which, of course, in this case is clearly against, the spirit of parliamentary majority, as Isham said just now. So that therein lies the danger, and of course, then people extrapolate from this and say, if the king could say no to a Mageran, for example, well, then the king should have the proactive power to convene parliament even during emergency if the king thinks that it is in the spirit of parliamentary democracy. And that is why the king has numerously reminded Muhyiddin that he should convene parliament as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay. And you see, Istana Negara already issued a statement and force it's not force, I shouldn't use the word force, but to remind our prime ministers to reconvene the parliament before the 1st of August. And right now, I ask Mr. Hisham, what choice do our current PF have to handle this kind of situation right now, in your view?
There are multiple opinions about this thing. Now, some say that the prime minister can just extend the proclamation of emergency that he made 6 months ago. But a lot of legal experts say that no, he cannot do that. So he has to apply for a new proclamation of emergency. Now this creates a problem for him, because if he has to apply for a new proclamation of emergency, now he has to go to the king again. So before 1st August 2021, which is in 4 weeks' time, now he has to go to the king again and apply to another emergency. I don't think the king will agree to another proclamation of emergency. Now, he had applied for the first proclamation of emergency way back in last October, and the king disagreed. Then a few months later, after COVID cases rised, then he applied again, then the king agreed. But this time around, I don't think the king agreed. So there is probably not much options that the prime minister has at the moment to extend the emergency post 1st August. So this is why we see the situation right now that Republican cabinet and ministers and the prime minister himself today agreed to open parliament before 1st August, probably because he hasn't much choice about it. So he has to open parliament before the 1st August, and like you said, the king has asked to do that 3 times already, and he doesn't have much choice now. And so, and today we see a new development that UMNO also have given the Perikatan National Government and the PM 14 days, I think, since 10 days ago. So they have about 4 days to open parliament. Otherwise, we will pull out of the government. So we'll see a lot of things coming into motion these 4 or 5 days. But whatever the situation is, I think it is almost definite that parliament is going to be open before 1st of August. 1st of August or earlier. I think looking at the situation now, we saw also PH, saying that they want everybody to come to parliament by 19th of July or something. And UMNO is going to be, is going to take action in 4 days. So I think, even many things are going to happen within 4 weeks' time. And I don't think we want to wait 4 weeks to open parliament. I think since everybody has agreed, so why don't we just open parliament in 1 week or 2 weeks' time? So this is what I see is going to happen within a few days.
Yeah, no matter how, we have to wait him from recover from diarrhea. So what about doctor, or your opinion on this? Unmute the mic.
Well, he has declared today, right, that indeed he would convene parliament before the 1st of August. Of course, I think there are some standing orders of parliament saying you need to have 28 days of notice, but I think those can be not so difficultly amended, right? You could have much shorter notice and so on. Actually, for Muhyiddin, I kept on thinking, what's the problem with this convening parliament? Because if I were Muhyiddin, having parliament convene either during emergency or even after emergency by itself is actually quite harmless to me. Why? Because remember last year when parliament met for many days, but every single day when Dr. Mahathir or Anwar Ibrahim or many others put up this motion of no confidence, the government of the day could use their procedural advantage to block those motions of no confidence, right? So you essentially cannot be unseated by having this parliament meeting. I think what he is sort of, in a sense, fearing is well, he does not quite have the majority, right? So when Parliament would enact certain law, certain motions and so on, and we are not even talking about motions of no confidence, just any decision, then, for example, the government side would come out short of a majority, right? Then it truly exposes his minority status, his lack of a parliamentary majority. And I think, as we say, padan muka, if he still holds on to power with that kind of parliamentary minority, it doesn't look very good on him. Even though if I were him, I really want to hold on to power, I could still sort of, well, hopefully with various interpretation and so on, force my way through. But still, that's I think it's just dragging for a few more days or a few more weeks before his government will have to face the music. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question to ask Mr. Hisham. Okay, this is the question actually to be asked. I have a friend want to ask Mr. Hisham. In fact, he said if our current Prime Minister very adamant and does not want to let the Parliament to reconvene, and what role you think UMNO MP can play?
Right. This is why I said just now, and I've written, I think, last week and a couple of weeks ago that even I've been writing about this for months that say that UMNO has some sort of pull in persuading the opening of Parliament. For example, if UMNO has 39 members of Parliament, so if all of them pull out, or even half of them pull out, then it is a clear indication to the king that Muhyiddin doesn't have the majority anymore. So if that is a clear indication to the king that Muhyiddin doesn't have a clear majority anymore, then the king can summon all the members of parliament again. And based on the constitution, it says that he can actually appoint a new prime minister to whomever that he thinks has a majority, that commands a majority of parliament. So this is the one thing, one of the things that Muhyiddin is probably concerned about, like Dr. O says. Then another thing that he is really, really concerned about, amounting to probably that he's probably scared about this, that when we open the parliament, maybe in a couple of weeks' time or at the end of the month or something, that when we open parliament, then we have to table a couple of things. The first thing that we got to table is a motion to approve the ordinance that was passed during emergency or before the emergency. So in the constitution that it says, and even in the ordinance of emergency 2021, it says that this ordinance needs to go to both houses of parliament to be passed. So this motion is going to be tabled first before any other motion. Now, the Speaker of Dewan Rakyat, lower house and the upper house, cannot deny this motion. Although the speakers can deny the motion of no confidence, but the speakers of the houses, of both houses, cannot deny the members of parliament to table the motion to approve or to pass the ordinance that has been going on during the emergency. So this has to be tabled first. So when this motion is tabled and it needs to be passed and it needs to be voted, now if this ordinance if Muhyiddin doesn't get the majority or if doesn't win this motion, then it is a clear indication that he has lost a majority. Then he has to step down, you see. So this is the thing. That's why some of us say that we're not going to go to parliament and table the motion of no confidence or confidence. Yes, because we don't need to, because we go to parliament. We table the motion of ordinance, and that thing has to be voted on, and we vote for it. Then we can see whether Muhyiddin has clear majority or not. Then the majority of Muhyiddin needs to be settled first. You see, we cannot discuss any other thing other than first the ordinance needs to be passed, and that requires votes by member of parliament. And the second, Muhyiddin needs to show or to prove his majority, to prove that he still has support. Otherwise, he cannot use a provision under Article 40, which is to impose the king to listen to him. So no prime minister can impose a king to listen to him when he is not the legitimate leader of the house, leader of the government. So if he is not legitimate prime minister, he doesn't have the majority support, then he cannot use government resources willy-nilly or whatever, for whatever that he wants. So he must obtain this legitimacy. He must prove that he has majority in parliament. And before that, he must table the ordinance, and the ordinance must be voted for and must be approved, and he needs the support of the members of parliament. As if now, I don't think that is going to survive the vote. So when we open parliament, I think his fate is hanging by a thread. So this is what I think.
Okay, thank you. I think Dr. Want to say something,
Yeah,
is it?
I would add to that. You see, I agree totally with what Isham said just now. And among the various prominent ordinances which the Muhyiddin administration proclaimed during the emergency were two which were very, very harmful to freedom of speech, freedom of free press, and so on. And if I remember correctly, one is about the so-called anti-fake news ordinance, because, well, it allows the government to essentially censor and determine what is true and what is not true in terms of news reporting, right? Instead of leaving it to the marketplace, to the self-restraints of the media community, right? And number two, if I remember correctly, it's another even more draconian ordinance about, if you criticize the emergency itself, saying the emergency is not for combating pandemic, it's for political purpose and so on, you could go to jail for a number of years and to be fined, I think, 100,000 or something. You imagine these two ordinances, I could immediately imagine all of Harapan's and perhaps the majority mainstream consensus MPs of UMNO would vote against them, right? Which clearly would demonstrate that they have a majority and that the Muhyiddin administration does not have such a majority. And that I think it's indeed what Muhyiddin is trying very much to avoid. Thank you.
Okay, there is a says that the real motive of reconvening the parliament is actually a seizure of power when Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim declares that he got the numbers. So, are you agree with this statement, Mr. Hisham?
No, not at all. I think they're talking about statutory declaration or declaration by members of parliament. One guy says that he has a number, the other guy say he has a number. So I've really written about this, that these SDs are not really reliable, because at the moment there are cases that people sign 2 or 3 SDs at the same time. So when when one member of parliament signed one SD, doesn't mean that he support this guy and reject the other guy, because he might sign another SD to support another guy too. So this is a situation that we have now, because these statutory declarations are not regulated. There is no rule or regulation that says that you cannot sign multiple SDs at the same time. This was what happened before, you see. So they are not quite reliable. So this is why this thing has to be proven in the House itself. Maybe if they want to do it through secret voting or open voting, that's fine. But it has to be proven in the House, because the SDs outside the House, although some says that they can, it's a legit way to prove support or whatever, but it's still not reliable, because it's no rules that says that one person cannot sign multiple SDs, and they do. And today we see one member of parliament U-turn their support. You see his support, MP of Padang Rengas, for example. So a few months ago, that he says he withdraws support from the Qatar national government, and today he says differently. He says now he supports the prime minister. So this thing changes every day. You see. So this is why we need to convene parliament. We need to open parliament, and we need to vote certain ordinances. And then we can prove that the current government is legitimate or not. If it's not legitimate, if we need to change the government to have a legitimate prime minister, to have a legitimate government, so be it. And not just because we want to, not just because of power, you see. But the main purpose of reconvening Parliament and to discuss about this thing is so that we can change policies. So what we have seen now for the past 6 months, the policies that the government made were not working. So in fact, we are in a worse situation than we were 6 months ago. And we were in a worse situation than we were 1 year ago. So during this time last year, in 1st July 2020, we had one case of COVID. Remember that? So today
Yes.
we have almost 7,000 cases. So what went wrong between last year and 6 months ago and today? So, and our vaccination rate is, just barely 10% of the population. So we are among the lowest vaccination rate compared to our neighbors. So we are in a very bad situation. So this proves that what government did or government policies for the last 6 months or 1 year have not worked. So we got to change government. So we have to change those policies. So if we need to change the government, change the ministers, change the cabinet, or change the prime minister to change these policies, so that we must do so that we protect people's interests. And what we see now is people's lives are at stake. Now people are hanging white flag because they are they are in a very bad situation. Some of them cannot eat and don't have money for food. So this, they cannot wait 1 month. They cannot even wait, 2 weeks for this. If people cannot eat, you cannot wait 2 days. You see, so we got to move very fast to solve this. And at the moment we have multiple crises happening at the same time. Not only that we have COVID crisis, we have economic crisis, and now the constitutional crisis is also brewing. So we cannot hope that the same people with the same set of mind to come out with different policies, you see. So we have one minister that cares about the factories, you see. Now our COVID cases, a lot of our COVID cases come from the factories. Now tonight we are imposing a lockdown or a curfew in Selangor and Wilayah Persekutuan, but the factories are still open. So what's wrong with there's something wrong with that. And we have ministers that encourage people to take loan from what she call community credit
Legal
community.
along.
Yeah, Along or Chetty or other name for loan sharks. So
Yeah.
we have these people
Right.
become ministers in the cabinet. You see, so you can't expect these people to come up with different policies for the people when they have the mindset like this. And so, if we need to change the government to change the policy, that is what we must do. Thank you.
And Dr. Oh, I would like to ask you on the other way, right? There are some people say that parliament, in fact, even the parliament do not reconvene. We have we have other leaders like our previous 7 prime minister could actually assist the current minister or give advice, or even the opposition's leaders like Anwar Ibrahim can actually assist the current prime minister in coping the issue of COVID-19. Is Dr. O?
Yes, I'm here.
So
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So therefore, they come up with the conclusions that the actuals of reconvene the parliament is just the seizure of power. So, what is your view on that?
Okay, number one, there's nothing wrong with this sort of so-called change of government if it needs to. You see, these terms are very cleverly crafted, seizure of power, trying to disunify the people and so on. Whenever a government is at the so-called regime preservation mode, they would like to preserve their regimes and so on. They will cleverly use such terms that the opposition is trying to seize powers. This is very difficult times, and everybody should unite around the prime minister of the day and so on. But what if the prime minister of the day and the government of the day, shall we say, is not as competent as desired? Then are we going to still unite around this prime minister and this government and sort of somehow muddling ourselves through? I think that would be a very dangerous proposition as well. I mean, it doesn't look like, as Isham detailed just now, that this government has, shall we say, a comprehensive policy in terms of dealing with the pandemic. It's more like wherever there's fire raging, you will send some sort of firefighters or fire brigades to put out the fire there. Selangor is raging, therefore you declare EMCO. But just, I think, less than a week ago, you say from now on, we don't talk about MCO anymore. And I got so confused last night. Suddenly, this EMCO came in. I thought we are not talking about MCOs anymore. And so there are a lot of these flip-flops of policies and so on, which I think number one make the people's already difficult life even more difficult, and number two, they are not, shall we say, conducive to the pandemic combat efforts. I think that is why a lot of people would like to see a change of government. Frankly speaking, I think by now, I mean, if you compare now to, let's say, 1 week ago, I think we are beyond the people, I think are beyond just calling for Parliament to be reconvened anymore. I think we are at the stage whereby we are very proactively asking this government to be replaced, in addition to Parliament being reconvened and so on. If it takes the Parliament to be reconvened in order to change this government, well, that's all for the better, because you cannot. I'm sorry. You sometimes perhaps we need to also, in a sense, differentiate between the legitimacy of the government and the competence of the government. If this government is, shall we say, illegitimate in the sense that it doesn't have a majority, but it's extremely competent in fighting the pandemic and so on, well, maybe we'll put up with it, right? I mean, to let it rule for a few months or even a year. But when it is both illegitimate and incompetent, I think the voice, the popular voice for it to step down is getting stronger and stronger. It has certainly gone beyond simply asking for Parliament to be reconvened. Thank you.
Okay, there's questions to be put to Mr. Hisham. You see, our Dewan Rakyat Deputy Speaker Azalina Oman, she says that there should be a political ceasefire among all political parties to focus on putting the rakyat and the country first during the COVID-19 pandemic. So my question is, how to ensure all the political leaders to put aside their difference and personal agenda, but to solely focus on the most crucial issue right now, that's COVID-19, if the parliament is reconvened?
Right. Well, I think all politicians have, some sort of agenda. So it is quite difficult to expect every one of the politicians to have a political ceasefire. But the danger is that if the politician in the government who hold government minister posts, if they have some other agenda other than thinking about public policy and the people, now that is dangerous. So, for example, if we see now, I think the main priority that is at the top of the Prime Minister and the cabinet ministers now are actually not the COVID. I think it is how to maintain their power and their post for as long as they can. So this is the agenda that they have now. Now this is dangerous. So this is why these things need to be sorted out. This is why we need to convene Parliament so that they are answerable to the policies that they made, that imposed on the people and on the rakyat for the last 6 months. And when we open Parliament, Tan Sri Muhyiddin, the Prime Minister, and even the finance minister also need to answer of the some allegations, some corruption allegations that are thrown to them with regard to the awarding of contracts, you see, for the last 6 months during emergency. So these are allegations that they need to answer to. So this is part of accountability. Not only that they need to be competent, but they need to be accountable so that they are answerable to all these things. So sometimes we need to have some political discussion so that we have to have good policy. You see, so the point of political struggle is to come out with the policy. So sometimes if we don't have a political discourse or political discussions in Parliament, so we probably, it's very hard for us to discuss about how to come out with a good policy for the people, because the ministers would think that what they're doing, the policies that they make, is probably good to him, but not necessarily good for others. So to answer your question, so I think to ask for political ceasefire, it depends what kind of political ceasefire. Sometimes they appear to be like political firing going on, but if they're discussing about policy, for me, it's okay. Although it appears like a political fight going on there, but the point is for them to open Parliament and see how it goes from there. So these people are politicians. I think most of them are mature politicians. So that's why I don't understand why they are so afraid to open Parliament and to face the voices that from those people that inherently from those people that disagree with them. So as a politician, so this thing is part and parcel of being a politician. You argue, some of your opinions are agreed by some, and some are disagreed by some. So I think they should accept this and go to Parliament and discuss about their ideas and policies so they can be debated about. Thank you.
Well, about your view, Dr. O, is there a possible of political ceasefire once the Parliament just reconvenes and all the MPs just solely focus on the issue of COVID-19?
Well, still, who is in charge? Who is the general? Who will be leading us to combat the pandemic? Right? Would it still be the same general, namely, Mr. Muhyiddin? And if that is the case, then what's the point of having democracy? Then might as well, have as he earnestly wishes to have everybody just following him and so on. I mean, we are not a sort of authoritarian country whereby those authoritarian leaders will make use of national crisis to sort of rally support, to use as excuse to sort of call up other political leaders to support him, and if they don't support him, then they are considered to be treacherous and so on. We are not that kind of country, especially not after 2018. We should be a much more mature democracy. Right now, our democratic progress is actually regressing. We are worse than worse than 2018. Before 2018, certainly, we essentially is ruled by so-called rule by diktat. It's not much different than some of those countries, our neighboring countries such as Myanmar and so on, except we don't have soldiers on the streets. Other than that, we are exactly like that. Namely, you have a government which is not accountable to the people, which is illegitimate, and which is incompetent in the.
Oh, I think he got technical issues. Okay.
All right.
Okay, while Dr. O is facing this technical issue, so I will ask Mr. Isham a question.
Right.
So there's a lot of rumors came out that the Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin will most likely to name UMNO leader Hishamuddin. I think Dr. O is come back. Or Dr. O, you want to continue to give us your opinion?
When I talk about illegitimacy, incompetence, and unaccountability, I think the power that be cut me off. So better let me be quiet for a few moments. Let's see how it happens. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
Okay. So just now I was asking Mr. Isham is that the Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin will most likely name. There's rumors come out UMNO leaders Hishamuddin Hussein as his successors, maybe the next Prime Minister if the situation call for it. So what's your view?
my view is that whoever that the current Prime Minister, Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, proposed to be his successor is not going to be accepted well by UMNO people, because you see now UMNO, it's not doesn't look Muhyiddin in a good position right now. So in fact, most of UMNO grassroots and UMNO in leadership doesn't want Muhyiddin. So they want Muhyiddin to step down. So whoever Muhyiddin endorsed is going to be in the same vicinity as that position. So this thing that Muhyiddin endorsed Hisham or want to carry Hishamuddin's name actually can, or it can backfire to Hishamuddin. So I think for Hishamuddin, maybe it's better for him to take a step back from Muhyiddin for a moment, because he doesn't want to be associated by people's going down, you see. So if UMNO doesn't like Muhyiddin, and you got UMNO doesn't like this guy, and then this guy is suggesting some guy, you say, I don't think UMNO will take that positively, especially when UMNO has the biggest party in Malaysia, has its structure, you see. And Hishamuddin doesn't have any post in the party. So when during the election, UMNO election in 2018, Hishamuddin did not contest, although he was the vice president before. So a lot of people doesn't see that positively. So some people say that he ran away when we were down, that when he comes back, a lot of opinion with regard to this. So he is not, this could create problem for him. So with this, together with association with Muhyiddin, if Muhyiddin endorse him, and if he wants to take Azmin Ali with him, then that probably will make things worse. So what I think is that if he wants to be the Prime Minister, he still has to go through UMNO's structure and system too. Probably if the Majlis Tertinggi of UMNO agrees or whatever, he might pull through. But just because Muhyiddin appoints him or anoint him or say that this is my successor, it's not going to be so, and it's not as easy as that. That's what I think. Thanks.
Dr. Earl, do you have something to say about this?
Yes,
Because
yes.
I look at Dr. Earl, he's even laughing and smiling
Well,
in front of the camera.
You see, after the Sheraton move earlier last year, suddenly anything is possible, right? Remember during the week after the Sheraton move, most of us political observers, we were sort of looking at whether it would still be Dr. Mahathir or would it be Anwar Ibrahim to be the new prime minister and so on, right? Lo and behold, if I remember correctly, on I think it's a Saturday or Sunday afternoon around 4:30, I was drinking coffee with a friend. The friend showed me saying, well, there seemed to be a statement from the palace. I said, true or not? And indeed, Muhyiddin was appointed to be the prime minister. At that time, it's doubtful whether he had a majority. But of course, our constitution said, the king would appoint somebody who, in the king's opinion, is likely to command a majority, right? So Muhyiddin being a dark horse candidate and successfully clinching the top political position in the country, I think that suddenly emboldened and encouraged a lot of people, because now we are slowly moving towards yet another stretch of political turmoil and uncertainty, a little bit like the weeks leading up to the Sheraton move, right? So a lot of people suddenly thought, hey, if Muhyiddin could do it a year and a half ago, why not me? I'm at least as senior as him, or maybe even more senior than him, right? So you see some, shall we say, political veterans such as Cooley also, not so subtly proposing himself. And Hisham did it in a more subtle way, of course, in the sense of not exactly dispelling the rumors and so on, because everybody thought, hey, I could also be the dark horse candidate, and since Muhyiddin could do it, but of course I agree with Isham. In fact, any politician who belongs to a party, whether it's UMNO, it's DAP, it's PKR, and so on, right? You cannot sort of go on a tangent of your own, asking people to collect, shall we say, letting people collect signatures to somehow support you, so that instead of the properly elected party leadership, you suddenly become the de facto party leader, and thereby should be, shall we say, the new prime minister or something like that. That doesn't go. I mean, it does not happen that way. I mean, Liu Qintong could not do it to DAP, right? Or Rafizi could not do it to PKR, right? It doesn't go that way. You must have certain party discipline, right? The party elected a leadership. The leadership is supposed to make the highest decision for the party. If you are not happy with the decision, well, you can either leave the party or you can wait till the next party election to topple the current leadership, right? So that's why I agree that by having Muhyiddin, in a sense, anointing Hisham is perhaps not such good news for Hisham, both in the short as well as the long run. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, there's a question that I would like to ask Mr. Isham is this. Assuming the change of the Prime Minister have been done, although just now we are discussing whether Hishamuddin is going to be the potential candidates for the Prime Minister, but seems like two speakers here today not really thinking that the Hishamuddin is going to be the Prime Minister. So assuming that the Prime Minister, we change the new Prime Minister. So would that be contribute to solving the three major problems currently is facing our country? There's a political instability, COVID-19 pandemic, and the current economic downturns. All changing a prime minister really have link to these three main issues? Is there a link?
This is the thing. I think it depends on who the leader that is going to replace Muhyiddin be. Now, if we appoint Hishamuddin, there is a chance that things might, this is my opinion, things might not be better in terms of political stability, because right now what we have is that we have the tug of war or the conflict between UMNO and PPBM. So UMNO and PPBM, we have a conflict between those two big parties. And we have, UMNO has always has a little bit of internal conflict, but nothing that we cannot resolve. We have faced all these little conflicts before. But if you appoint somebody who is not the president, or at least someone in the top 5 leadership to be the prime minister, then that could pose another, probably not another, that would pose a big conflict internally within UMNO. So you change the prime minister. So last time you have inter-party conflict between UMNO and PPBM. Now you're going to have an inter-party conflict between UMNO and PPBM, because Hishamuddin is going to have to pull PPBM together to support him as the prime minister. And at the same time, he's going to have an intra-party conflict within UMNO, because not everybody agrees with him to be the prime minister. So things are probably going to get worse instead of better. So because of all these things is happening, now we still cannot focus on COVID-19 and to come up with good policies, because everybody is, top priority on their head is to solve their position first. Nobody is thinking about policy when they don't know whether tomorrow they're going to be in office or not. So this is going to be the problem. So that's why my solution last time was that there are probably a few scenarios that we can do. One is to appoint interim prime minister, where the interim prime minister key performance indicator or KPI is just to settle COVID. So it's not the real prime minister. So he doesn't have the authority to the total authority to spend government resources or to appoint people to the cabinet or to critical government posts or something like that. So his KPI is just to solve the COVID without having the power for government resources and to appoint people. So when this happened, he doesn't need to do a lot of horse trading and to buy off people to support him as the legitimate prime minister. Also, his focus is entirely on COVID, you see, without having to think about how to maintain his power post-COVID or whether after this COVID ends, that his power is going to end, and so on and so forth. So what we have right now, what we don't want to have if we change prime minister, is a guy or a prime minister that has conflict of interest and conflict of priority. So you see now Muhyiddin and his fellow cabinet members, the ministers that he appoint, have a conflict of interest because they have some sort of conflict dissonance in their mind right now. Because if they solve the COVID, if the COVID numbers go down, they're going to have to open parliament, for example, and they're going to have to end the emergency. When they end the emergency and they open parliament, and chances are they're going to lose their position. So this is the conflict and the dissonance in their mind, what's going on, and probably what's going on in their mind right now. So we don't want a guy that we replace to have the same kind of conflict. That if there's soft conflict, the conflict figures coming down below 4,000, they're going to lose their job. So that's what we don't want. Now, the statement by Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin says that, he's going to end PKP, the MCO, if the COVID figure falls below 4,000. That doesn't make sense because, in essence, his motivation is that he want to maintain power first. So pushing COVID figure down below 4,000 is going to mean that he's risking his job. So it just doesn't jive there. So whatever the setup, post replacement of the prime minister is going to have a setup that have the priority right, not have a conflict of interest or conflict of priority that we have at the moment. Thank you.
Dr. Oh, just now our speakers, Mr. Isham, mentioning about interim prime minister. So what is your view on that, to have an interim prime minister?
Well, that sounds like the so-called Mahathir solution, right? Dr. Mahathir proposed something similar, I think. But of course, Dr. Mahathir, being Dr. Mahathir, would of course propose himself as the interim prime minister or acting prime minister. Frankly speaking, during these extremely difficult times, we do need somebody who is famous for his, shall we say, ruthlessness or resolute decision-making skills, right? Somebody like Dr. Mahathir. I, in terms of competence, I have supreme confidence on him. The only problem is Dr. Mahathir also has his, shall we say, authoritarian tendency. There is, of course, fear that, he would not let go this time and so on, despite his quite advanced age. But we are at this stage now. I think a lot of us, when we talk about people's livelihood, people's lives, and so on, I think first and foremost, we are looking for competence. If that person is indeed extremely confident, extremely resolute in making decisions and carrying them through and so on, we could probably tolerate a little bit of illegitimacy and even unaccountability. It would be nice if we can have all three: legitimacy, accountability, and competence. But I think competence in many people's mind is number one. And this government is disliked by many people because it is popularly perceived as incompetent, right? So yes, I could imagine, for example, somebody like Dr. Mahathir. I personally would prefer Rafida Aziz, but unfortunately, she doesn't have a MP position, so she cannot be. I would imagine. But of course, this is just delaying shall we say, the political showdown, because at some point, this interim prime minister, or as we said, would probably have to step down And when that interim prime minister steps down, well, this sort of political stalemate, political turmoil would resurface again, but hopefully at a post-pandemic stage. Yeah.
Okay,
So-
I have a questions to ask Mr. Isham. There's always some rumors says that UMNO is going to cooperate with with Democratic Actions Party (DAP) to form the new government. So, as a member of UMNO, what is your view on that?
Okay, Maxine, before I answer that, can you give me a minute to add to my previous assertion before?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I've written about this. I think a few months ago. One of the condition that I said that for interim prime minister is for us to dissolve parliament first and then appoint the interim prime minister. Now, when we dissolve parliament, we don't have to do during emergency. We do not have to call for election within 60 days. So what we do is that last time when we proposed dissolution of parliament, people say that, okay, we're going to have to do the election within 60 days. So what happened now is in COVID, you want to have election during COVID time. So that's not necessarily the case because at the moment we are in emergency and we can actually dissolve parliament. We open parliament and then we dissolve parliament and then we can actually postpone the election beyond 60 days until COVID settles. So why is the requirement? Why did I suggest the requirement for the dissolution of parliament? And then we appoint somebody as an interim prime minister. Basically, that one is to mitigate and to negate the wrong priority just now that I mentioned. So if you dissolve parliament, there is no longer the necessity to horse trade. You see, to buy off MPs to support you as to prolong your power as a prime minister because you're only interim prime minister because the parliament has already been dissolved. So the interim prime minister, without the necessity, without the requirement, without the drive to prolong his power beyond COVID, so has the focus just to settle COVID. So this is what I meant by having a prime minister and interim prime minister. And to the suggestion of Dr. Mahathir and Rafida Aziz and Dr. O, those people are probably not the top of my preference. So
who is your preference?
well, there are a few of my preference. I'm a party member, so I can't say here. If I say one name, then other people might, in Malay say kecil hati or something. So I reserve my preference.
Yeah.
So like I said, we got to have a setup that remove the priority, remove the situation where those people has different objective. Their objective is to prolong their power, so they do horse trading and buy MPs and so on, so on and so forth. So we want them to just focus on COVID. So what we can do, open parliament, we debate about the ordinance, and we have the option of actually to dissolve parliament and appoint an interim prime minister with an interim cabinet just to focus on COVID. And then we see after 60 days, if COVID doesn't go down, we may extend the election further, maybe to 6 months or 1 year or whatever. And to answer your question of the cooperation with DAP, I think I've written about this. I think many times that I disagree about it. And there are multiple reasons for this. Number one, because these two big and old parties both have different ideology. You see, so I don't like to see any parties join together just because of expediency. Because this is the reason why I disagreed with the Sheraton move. So during the Sheraton move last year, so I think I was among the first one who assert my disagreement to it. So I wrote about it. I even the president called me that time and he asked my opinion about it. So I told the president that I disagree about it. I disagreed with the Sheraton move. And I don't like, in politics, you can cooperate with anybody, but if your cooperation is based on expediency, that is not a good base or good platform for cooperation. Now, DAP has different ideology than UMNO, and UMNO has different ideology. If you cooperate with different ideology, there tend to be crisis along the way, and we don't want that. And practicality also, I think, in terms of practicality, there is probably no real need for UMNO to cooperate with DAP, nor DAP to cooperate with UMNO at the moment, because we cooperate before election because we want to get the voters that support DAP, support UMNO, support UMNO voters to support DAP. If you see the grassroots of UMNO, they are allergic to DAP, and I think DAP vice versa for DAP supporters too. I know in the future that could change, but at the moment it doesn't seem to be. And at the moment also, we see that DAP has about 40 core election areas, election parliaments, and these 40 parliamentary seats, those are not UMNO parliamentary seats. So DAP and UMNO, they don't compete at the same area. So we don't actually, going after the same parliament, so to say. And if you ask me about the cooperation, I think the critical question is when. So when do you think we should cooperate, whether we should cooperate before election or after election? I do not see that we're going to cooperate with DAP before the election. I think before the election, DAP is just going to go their own way, and UMNO with Barisan Nasional possibly cooperate with some other party. But there is probably a possibility that the cooperation might be post-election. So I think right now, it's very difficult for people or the parties to cooperate before the general election at the moment because of the complication of the seats allocation, because nobody wants to let go their current seat. And everybody, because of the current instability in politics at the moment in the country, everybody thinks they have a chance. Now, UMNO thinks they have a chance to win big. And PKR also, Anwar Ibrahim also think that he has a chance of becoming prime minister. So everybody think they have a chance to win the general election and becoming the prime minister. And nobody wants to give away or to trade their precious seats that they have. So this is why I said the possibility of these parties cooperating and allocating seats among each other before election is probably little. So, but there is possibility that they might cooperate post-election when everything settles. So after the G15, then we might know for sure, each party's actual strength. Now we don't know, so we don't know currently the actual strength of DAP, for example. We don't know exactly the actual strength of PAS, and we don't know actually the actual strength of PKR, nor do we know the actual strength of UMNO. It could change, or it has changed, I think, a lot since GE14, you see, because GE14, there are different dynamics at play. Tun Mahathir was there. People don't like BN government. People, a lot of the negative campaigns towards the Barisan Nasional government, and that has changed at the moment. So we could see the increase in support to Barisan Nasional and probably decrease in support in DAP. But of course, if you ask DAP and PKR, they say, no, we still have the support. So nobody knows for sure. So this is why I said before GE15, everybody going to go like they are at the moment. Maybe there are minor cooperation between some parties, or UMNO PAS if they want, or if PAS want to go with PPBM if they chose. But I think the big cooperation is going to be after GE15, when people know exactly the actual strength that they have, and in order to form their coalition, then they cooperate among each other. So there are a lot of possibilities there. Like we saw in the British Parliament or British government in 2010, you see. So for the first time, they made in 2010, for the first time, they made a coalition government because no one party has a majority. Before that, it has two parties, the Labour government, the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. And always before 2010, the government in the UK was known as the Labour government or the Conservative government, but not post-2010. So post-2010, they're a coalition government. They even have the Act, you see, so the Supply Act or something like that to for the coalition party to combine to become a government and to elect prime minister and deputy prime minister. So we might see this happening post GE 15. So this is why I think the question of whether we're going to cooperate with the AP or not, my opinion says not at the moment. So thanks.
Dr. O, what is your opinion? Basically, Mr. Isham is trying to say that this is a matter of time, and most probably the cooperation is after the election, but not before the elections.
I think indeed the time is of the essence. I think we are purely talking about the possibility of, let's say, UMNO and DAP somehow or at some point in time belonging to the same ruling coalition. I think that is distinctly possible, mainly because nowadays, whether it is now or whether it is after the so-called 15th general election and so on, I think the fragmentation of our political landscape has reached such a state whereby not one single party, not UMNO, not PKR, not DAP, I think Bersatu could be somehow marginalized, but I mean, these three parties, not a single one of them would be able to command an outright majority in parliament. So if you put these three parties as A, B, and C, somehow you need to have a combination, right? A and B, B and C, C and A, or A, B, C, and so on. But it would not be just A or B or C, right? So in that sense, I think it is distinctly possible for UMNO and DAP to sort of enter into a coalition, especially when there's, as mentioned just now, there's no clash in their various seats. I mean, they could, they don't even have to, in a sense, cooperate to run for elections, right? UMNO would focus on UMNO's seats, DAP will focus on DAP's seats, they'll run their own seats and then win a large number of seats, and then in combination, it's, let's say, over a majority, or maybe in combination with some other parties, right? So that is after election. But even before election, if they have, if they can somehow also rob in some other parties, why not? I don't see a problem beyond, of course, ideological differences and so on. But again, ideological differences nowadays we see strange bedfellows, right? My favorite BB, I mean, well, when I first went to US to study about exactly 30 years ago, such a long time, I saw BB, Benjamin Netanyahu, the former Israeli prime minister, always appearing on TV, and then he became the opposition leader, and then lo and behold, he became prime minister and so on. And then, he tried to put together a ruling coalition unsuccessfully, and now the Israeli ruling coalition has 8 parties from across the political spectrums, from the most right-wing Zionist kind of party you can imagine, to the most left-wing, I think, somewhat communist type of parties, and even Arab party and so on, thrown in amongst the mix. So I really don't see, beyond the ideological difference, the impossibility of these two parties coming together, as I said, to form a ruling coalition so that they could be part of a new government. I remember very well one other anecdote. I think it was about, let's say, 10 years ago. I was invited to go to a forum in MCA. And then, lo and behold, the organizer, which is, I think, some MCA unit, he invited Tian Chua, who was then the PKR member of parliament, right? And Tian Chua said something which really stuck in my mind. He said something to the effect that, why do we join politics? We join politics in order to form government. If we don't want to form government, please get out of politics, right? So politics, according to Tian Chua, is about forming government. And if you want to form a government and be part of a government, well, you need to make the compromises. And I think these two, shall we say, the most senior parties in the country will be able to work out these compromises. Thank you.
And
Okay, now I think
Maxine, sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, Maxine. I mean, can I add something? Sorry.
Yeah, of course you can.
Right, because this DAP subject and UMNO is very, very sensitive and touchy subjects to the political party. So, if you and then I think if you ask me about possibility, of course, in politics everything is possible. But if you ask me about the probability, I think the probability that UMNO is going to cooperate with DAP is very, very low, I think. And even post GE15, I'm not saying that that thing is a complete impossibility. Like I said, anything is possible in politics, but in all probability, I don't see it coming, because I think post GE, I have a good feeling about how Barisan Nasional is going to perform in the coming GE 15. Of course, people have different opinion, but I think in way back in February, I think 4 months ago, I have tabled my views about the numbers of seats that is on the table. You see how many seats that we can win, how many seats that DAP probably can win. I think we have pretty good chance in this coming GE15 to win more seats than last time. And last time in GE14, I think UMNO won about 55 seats. Not about, they won 55 seats in last general election. So before that, UMNO has about 88 seats, if I'm not mistaken. So they lost 33 seats in GE14 compared to GE13. Now, these 30 odd seats are mostly from Felda parliamentary seats, because last time these people from PH came to Felda. These Felda seats are fixed deposit before. We never lost Felda areas before, you see, up until GE14. Now, when GE14 PH went to the Felda constituencies, Felda seats, and they promised a lot of things, including to waive half of Felda settlers' debt. So I think many voters in Felda areas were persuaded by that empty promise, and PH government, after they won the election in May of 2018, they didn't deliver on that promise. So now the Felda voters are, I don't think Felda voters are going to be persuaded again to vote for PH because of the anti-promises, particularly on those 30 odd seats. So I think as far as Barisan Nasional is concerned, I think we have a good chance in these 30 seats to add to those 55 seats they already won. Now, these 55 seats that Barisan Nasional won in GE14, so we won those seats at the lowest support level in history of Barisan Nasional. So chances are, I'm not being overconfident when I say this, I think realistically in GE15, we're gonna retain those 55 seats. And on top of the 55 seats, I think we have a very good chance to regain those 30 seats that we lost in GE14. So if you add those together, so 55 plus 30, we have about 85 seats. Now, 85 is a huge block. They're going to revert back to pre-GE14 situation. Now, we got 85 seats after GE15. Then it is a huge block for us to figure out how to form the government. Now, before that, in GE13 and GE15, UMNO has always had about around that seat, 80 to 90 seats. Then other parties such as PBB, GPS in Sarawak, they contribute about 18 to 20 seats. Now, if we win about 85 seats, the Sarawak contribute about 20 seats. It's already about 105. So we only need about 7 more seats, maybe from Sabah or something, to form the government. So that's why I said in terms of probability that we might not need to cooperate with the AP even post G15. But like you said, anything is possible. But in terms of all probability, my opinion is just that I don't see it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Dr. O, you have anything to add on from what Mr. Isham said?
So it boils down to where I came from again, namely Sabah and Sarawak. I don't know what to say. I mean, it would appear that Sabah and Sarawak would always be made use to, you know, to make up the numbers for one or the other side of peninsular politics. The fear, of course, is you know that even the new government would revert to a lack of diversity and so on. Of course, MCA makes very plentiful use of this argument that non-Malays will go for NCAs and MICs and so on. But then we are going back to pre-2018 scenario, whereby the non-Malays in this country would still see no hope for themselves and their posterity. So that is a very bleak situation for a lot of us. But yeah, let's see how it goes.
Okay, let's discuss on some very minor issue against. So, Dr. O, how you define the white flag movement? As there's a says that it indicates a non-confidence actions from the rakyat toward the current governments and make them no choice but turn to the public in order to survive. So, what is your opinion about that?
Well, in a sense, it is. I think it's number one, above everything else, an act of desperation, right? If you look again, since I'm from Sabah, I'm currently in Peninsula, but I mean, my wife is still back in Sabah, for example. She works with a lot of residents from the interior community of Sabah. These are really, I wouldn't say really hardcore poor, but I mean they live in very remote areas and they're certainly belonging to the B40s groups and so on. Really, I mean the lack of adequate food stuff for them to tide themselves and their families through these lockdowns and so on. It's really serious to the extent that sometimes they need to be very creative. My wife is an architect, for example. She recently designed a community center for one of these very remote communities. They frankly told her they don't have money to pay her. So instead, they pay her by some of those fruits and vegetables that they were planting, right? So then she saw that some other communities which she was also working with, they don't have food, to be blunt about it. So she asked this community which is paying her by fruits and veggies to directly send those fruits and veggies to some other communities so that at least some residents would have a bit of food and so on. So we are reducing to that kind of I don't know, not exactly barter trade, but barter aids, barter assistance. Like one community with extra staff would send it to another community and so on. So indeed, I think this white flag movement is it's a reflection of people's really desperation in their livelihoods and so on. But of course, once you are in that kind of dire circumstances, you don't feel satisfied with this government and so on, right? So of course, then there's a political element into it, saying, hey, well, this is a not so useful government, not so competent government, and so on. It's of course also a reflection of that kind of sentiment. So of course, it's both desperation as well as defiance, I would say. Thank you.
Mr. Isham.
Right.
So what is I saw you wrote the articles of the white flag movement.
Right. Yeah. I'm actually before that, I'd like to add to the comment about polarity just now that Dr. O touched a bit about the polarity.
Okay.
ethnic dynamics and political thing. I think during the GE14, we saw that people voted according to race in GE14. So if we see the percentage of the non-Malay, particularly the Chinese who voted for Barisan Nasional in GE14, it was 5%. It was 5%. So 95% of the Chinese and non-Chinese voted for PH in GE14. And that 5% is also, to me, is not accurate because when they do the statistical analysis, that 5% is actually margin of error. So it could be less, the actual number could be less than 5%. It could be about 1 or 2% of the Chinese who voted for Barisan Nasional during GE14. And the percentage of Indian who voted for Barisan Nasional during the last GE was around 15 to 16%. So that's why in GE14 we saw this kind of polarization. But I think this could change. There's a huge possibility this could change in GE15 because if I live around the non-Malay community around this area in Selangor. So I see the sentiment change a bit from before GE14, not a bit. There's a lot of changes in sentiment towards the PN government particularly, and also towards PH before the Langkah Sheraton, you see. So this is why I think GE15, the percentage, I don't think PH is going to get 95 to 99% of Chinese support again in GE15. And I'm not just being optimistic, I think I'm being realistic. So the polarization of votes according to race, I think is going to tame down a little bit after during GE15. If you ask around now between Perikatan Nasional, PH, and Barisan Nasional, I think the least hated coalition now is probably Barisan Nasional because the least hated. I'm not saying the most, but I'm saying the least hated because if you ask about PH, what did they do during 22 months' time of their government? So a lot of promises undelivered, and people are still angry about that. And when we changed the government to Perikatan Nasional, things have not change much. So this is why I think if we go to election in GE15, so we're probably going to see different dynamics there, and we don't see just all the Chinese or most of the Chinese voted PH and most of the Malays voted Barisan Nasional and so on and so forth. We're going to see more, I think, the competition of ideas now more than we had before, because during this COVID pandemic, that we see that if we have incompetent government that comes out with very bad policy, then we know what that how's that impact the people. So because of that, we know now that we need competent government. That government the people that we vote for has to be smart people that come out with good policies, so that they come up with good things instead of bad things or negative things that impact us. So people understand that thing more than they did before, probably. So in GE15, I think some dynamics going to change about who we elect, more than just the consideration of races and ethnicity. So in GE15, I think a lot of things is going to move away from pre-GE14. So things are I think looking. There's a silver lining and there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So
I
to
actually
answer
have
your
a question.
Right.
Actually, I have a question. Just now, Mr. Isham, you say that after you see the percentage, like about 1 to 2% Chinese actually vote Barisan Nasional, and we know that MCA is like one of the party coalition in Barisan Nasional. So, is there any advice that you can give the MCA in order to regain the vote of Chinese, or the confidence of Chinese community towards MCA?
Well, I think we don't we shouldn't lose hope just yet. I think the sentiment, this is the thing about politics. Sentiment changes every day. You say one day people don't like you, the next day people like you, and the next day they hate you again, and then they like you again. So I think that is what's happening now. I think if you ask around the community about even even the Malay community or the Chinese community or the Indian community or the non-Malay, disregarding the races, everybody seems to agree that we need a competent government that can come out with good policy. So I think, like I said just now, if these three coalitions go to election and fight among each other, like BN, Perikatan Nasional, and also PH, so Barisan Nasional, including MCA and MIC, has a good chance there. And remember that things could change pretty drastically. So, for example, in my state of Selangor, in 2004, in Selangor, we won 52 out of 56 seats in Selangor. Remember that in 2004? 52 out of 56. So PH and PK only won, I think DAP won 4 seats, 52. But within just 4 years, things changed drastically that we lost 20 seats and then we lost another, I think, another how many seats? Another 44 seats. And then we, within 10 years, I think, we were, the situation were mirrored. So we were at PA situation in 2004, we only won 4 seats and they won 52 seats. So things in politics could change pretty drastically. Now, there is probably a blessing in disguise about, coming out of this COVID pandemic, that people realize a lot of things now, and the sentiment for Barisan Nasional, MCA and MRC, I think is picking up and is changing. So don't lose hope. Then we might see a lot of change coming. So that's my advice. And about the white flag movement thing, I support it, and I wrote something this morning about it. And I think there is one state government, leader of the state government, in fact, the chief minister of one state government, that says that he was against the white flag movement. So he said this is a sign of protest and propaganda towards the government. I think he got his priority wrong. I think, because this is not about the protest to the government. People raise white flag at the moment, not to show protest to the government, but because they feel pressured and they feel desperate, that they require help. So it's not about the government, why people raise the white flag. It's about they're desperate and seeking help. And when people are desperate to seek help, then we should help them. I think instead of asking people to pull the white flag down by the government, I think the government is supposed to be the first one to offer help to the people who needed it, because it's not easy for people to raise white flag. It takes a lot of courage, because some people are shy and embarrassed to raise white flag, so it's not easy. But instead of having your child not eaten, for a few days, I think it's better for you for them to raise a white flag and seek help. And there are a lot of people who want to help. Actually, I was a chairman of Malaysian Volunteers for 5 years, so I've met a lot of poor people, a lot of people in hardship, and there are still many people, poor people and people facing hardship, and there are many more right now, during COVID pandemic. And instead of scolding them for raising white flag, I think we should do the opposite and help them. So yeah, I do support the white flag movement, and I think we should help those in need, particularly right now, that people are really, really in difficult times. They are not just, raising white flag for willy-nilly, or just for fun or something. So they really, really need help.
I just now I look at the screen. I think Dr. O has something to say when Mr. Isham talked about the about the elections?
Well,
Because I look at the screen.
yes. Of course, political combinations and permutations change, very drastically over a short period of time. I think not so long ago, I thought that by having for example, UMNO and PAS working together under Muafakat, they will be quite invincible, right? I mean, winning certainly, like Hisham just said, let's say about 80 to 90 seats and so on. And if the two parties could coordinate well, and they could even win between them, let's say 100 seats. Well, but then, of course, as we said again, things change very fast, right? Because PAS nowadays seems to sort of distance itself more and more from UMNO and move more and more towards, let's say, Bersatu. And that, of course, will change the dynamic quite a lot because, let's say, if in any particular seat, if UMNO comes up against, let's say, the Bersatu or PAS type of new coalition, well, it's, I don't know. I mean, I would still think UMNO would win, but perhaps not with such a majority, or sometimes it can be dicey, 55-45, 51-49, and so on, right? So that puts in a bit of a dynamic there as to how the seats allocations, the number of seats to be won among these three, shall we say, Malay majority parties, right? Malay-based parties. As to MCA and MIC, and my good friend Dr. Dominic Lau on the other side, with Bersatu and so on. I want to be kind and said they really need to work hard to. I mean, I'm saying this, well, more than half seriously. I mean, they really need to work very hard to regain the confidence of their respective, shall we say, majority community, namely, I don't know, Chinese or Indians or.
Oops.
I think. Okay, never mind.
Okay.
While we are,
Well,
I think
well,
Mr. Hisham, you have something to say on
yeah,
what has been said on
just
Dr. O.
Can I say 55 plus 30, about 85 seats? That one doesn't include past seats, actually. So because the 30 seats that, oh, sorry, Dr. O, you want to?
No, go ahead first. Yeah.
Okay, so that one doesn't include past seats because that one just the 30 seats that we lost that we didn't lose to PAS during the 18. So those are all seats that we lost to hit and back. Now with regard to PAS, that rightly pointed was that they are as of now they are supporting the Perikatan Nasional government. So there is a possibility that they're going to go for election with PPBM and also dominate Gerakan. So that's why we discount the support from PAS. So those 55 plus 30 doesn't include PAS seats. Now I think PAS people also has concern about this because I think we did the calculation and they did the calculation too. I think there is a possibility that some of their seats also are at risk of losing if they go with PPPM. Now they have 18 seats. They keep losing seat every general election. Last general election they won 18. Before that was I think what 20 something 30, 20 something 30, and before that they got about more than that. So if they go with PPPM going for GE15, I think about about half, 6 to 9 of past seats are at risk. So I think they got a this is realistically speaking, nothing against, nothing, to undermine past or anything like that. I'm just saying that realistically, even some of their guys also of the opinion that some of their seats, 6 to 9 of their seats, are basically with PPPM. So this is the thing. But if we go, I spoke to about it. This is an open secret. It's not a secret anymore. So everybody knows this. Even I've wrote about this. I've written about this a few months back. I said now currently PAS has 18 seats. If they go with Muafakat Nasional, they can automatically, not to say automatically, just based on the votes that we got and they had during GE15, they can add 7 more seats. So from 18 to 25, and if they go with us. So, but if they go with PPBM, a lot of the seats going to be at risk because they're going to be facing us face to face and PH at the same time. So some of their seats now held by the minister in cabinet, for example, is also at risk. So past people also knows this, and this is why not all of the past people that I spoke to agree for them to go for G15 with PPBM and Perikatan Nasional. So right now at the moment our calculation is a bit conservative a little bit, but we're still hoping that they might join us. But if they don't and they join Perikatan Nasional, what to do, so be it. So we're just going to go with Barisan Nasional as before, and I think things are looking better now than GE14. I was at PMO during GE14. I was not in the war room, but I saw a lot of things coming back then, but I was not in the war room. But so at that particular time, there are signs and signals and hope and optimism and there are a lot of things and we lost. And the feeling that I get now is probably a lot better than we were before G14. So I'm quite optimistic about G15 and hope MCA and MIC also have the same sentiment. So thank you.
Okay, before we look at the comment posted by all the audience, so Dr. O, you have anything to add about, since we're going very far to discuss about GE15?
Well, again, I think MIC, MCA, and Gerakan and so on, who I don't think they have regained the trust of their various communities. Tanjung PI, I think it's indeed voters trying to send a signal to PH that they are not happy about PH various U-turns and so on, but that is a by-election. In a general election, when you're determining who will form government and so on, I think the non-Malays voting patterns would pretty much go back to as before. But of course, there is saving grace for, let's say, UMNO, because now that you are no longer working with PAS, I think the willingness for non-Malays to vote for you would indeed be on the uptick, shall we say. Whichever party is working with PAS, and of course PAS itself would likely not get a lot of non-Malay support for that sense. And now I might be wrong, but I sense also that MCA, MIC, it's also having very funny attitude, right? I mean, like they should be members of Barisan Nasional, but it doesn't look like in many issues, especially when UMNO is going against Bersatu and so on. It doesn't look like MCA and MIC are also adopting similar attitude. So this sort of funny attitude, neither here nor there, are they trying to pull a trick like PAS or something like that? That also, doesn't quite go well with a lot of voters and so on, because you are perceived to be not having a real political stand. I mean, at the moment, I would say a lot of even non-Malays are saying, we have to support UMNO because UMNO is able is the most hopeful party in terms of toppling the present government. And if you as MCA and MIC don't sort of hitch on that sentiment, that sort of, shall we say, a temporary reversal of non-Malay sentiments, and instead go and somehow, hug Muhyiddin's and so on, I don't think they will go down very well, because Muhyiddin's side now, they have passed with them. So that's why I say MCA, MIC, they need to be more clear-eyed as to what their respective constituencies are really the sentiments of their respective constituencies. Thank you.
Okay, since just now Dr. O mentioned about Tanjung BI, so Mr. Isham, you have something to say on Tanjung BI? If no, then we are going to this. Okay.
Right. Yeah. I was involved in the Tanjung Piai by-election, and at that time, I was also had the opinion that there were a lot of opinions at that time of who do we feel for the candidate of Tanjung Piai, whether we put UMNO or MCA at that time. And at that particular time, I think that we should put MCA, and then the leadership agreed with that opinion. And true enough, we won because the calculation shows that if we put UMNO at that particular time, so we might win or we might lose. So we have a 50-50 chance in Tanjung Piai. Although we got the support of PAS in Tanjung Piai, but PAS support in Tanjung Piai is about 2,000 votes at that time. But Wijek Sang in Tanjung Piai could pull more votes than that. So the balancing act that we had to do at that particular time is that if we put an UMNO candidate, we lose the Chinese support. And if we put a Chinese candidate, we lose the Malay support. But when we put Wijek Sang there, we got the Malay support there. We overwhelmingly get the Malay support, and at the same time we pull the Chinese support for Wijek Sang. That's why we won. I think more than expected. We expect to win about 5,000 majority only at that time, but we won about 15 to 16,000 majority. So Tanjung Piai is a success story that we hope to repeat. Although there are a lot more things to do, and there are a lot more there are a lot of things that happened after Tanjung Piai until now that we got to look at. But my opinion on the matter of general election is that I always say to our guys on the ground as well as the leadership is to look at every constituency and every seat differently, like we look at when we go for the by-election. Because a mistake that we did many times in the previous GE is to look at the whole GE 222 seats with the same campaign and same modus operandi. So it is every seat is different composition and different sentiment. We have like rural seats, we have urban seats, we have different composition of ethnicity and different problems. So people in urban areas have different problems than people in rural areas, and vice versa. So we should look at the seats like we look at by-election times 222 times. So if you are to win again this time, but that is tactically. But I think in the whole approach of going for election, now that we talk about it, is that number one is we should first think about what we offer to the people, how we can help them, about ideas about how to make their life better first, So I don't want to go into tactical saying that, okay, this area, how many percent and all that. So we ought to focus on what we can offer to the people, how to make their life better. At the time where we are facing multiple crises at the same time, and people are facing a lot of difficulties. So think about how to make their life better to face the coming days. And then if we can do that, and the support will come to us. That's what I think.
Okay, I looked at the comments there. There are a few questions being posed by the audience. So, and there's one question specifically want to ask Mr. Isham. It says, do you think the best way to solve the current political instability is to resolve the parliament soonest once the pandemic settled down? Or what do you suggest to end the political chaos?
Okay, thank you. This question from Mr. Teo. Right. Thank you, Mr. Teo. So I think I mentioned it in passing before that we need to solve this political impasse that we have right now. And one of the solution that I have is first to open parliament so that the members of parliament can reconvene. And from that, we can discuss about the ordinance, and we can vote the ordinance, and we can discuss also about the policy. If we need to change the policy that have not worked in the past 6 months, that we can do in parliament. And at the same time, if we need to replace the government now, because the government is not working right now, they came out with bad policies for the people. So we can do that in parliament too. And then the next step is to replace the government, the prime minister, with somebody else. So like I said, I have my preference of who that person is going to be replaced. But for me, that's not the main thing. The main thing is whoever that replaced as the prime minister to head the new government has to have his priorities straight, which is not to just to hang on to power and prolong his premiership, but actually to have a priority to solving COVID. So in order for us to do that, it's probably best for us to discuss, pass or not pass the ordinance, replace the prime minister, and then after that to dissolve parliament. Why I said we need to dissolve parliament so that whoever become the premier, albeit the interim prime minister, do not have the agenda, number one agenda to prolong his power, but instead they should be focusing on COVID. And we can do that if we dissolve parliament, because once you dissolve parliament, there is no necessity and drive to do horse trading anymore. So we're gonna have our priorities straight. So this is one thing that we can do. And if we dissolve also, last time the problem of the dissolution of parliament, that people say that according to the constitution that you need to have election within 60 days, but now you don't need to. You know, if you during emergency you can prolong. So if emergency ends on 1st of August this year, what we can do is that we open parliament, ends emergency, and we can dissolve parliament and wait 60 days. If COVID still around, we can actually go to Agong and say we want an emergency just to prolong, just to extend another 60 days or 6 months for election or something. So this is what I think we got to do to get out of this impasse and get out of this political instability and get out of this mess politically. Because if for as long as we do not solve this political impasse and instability, I don't think those people in the government and the parliament can focus on solving the COVID pandemic.
There's a comment from the audience saying that they want Bosco to come back for helping the people right now. I know both of the speaker today, they have served provide services to Bosco before. So anything to reply to this comment, they want Bosco to come back.
Well, I am biased about this, so I think people can probably already know what my answer is, because I am a Bosco man. So I've worked with Bosco, Dato' Najib, for 5 years when I was at PMO 2013 until 2018. and I actually served him way before that. So I joined the government in 2008 in the Economic Planning Unit. Before that, I served Government Link Companies GLC for about 10 years. So in most of my 20 years in the government and GLC, so I've been working with Dato Najib, so I know him. And after we lost the general election, though I'm not under his employ anymore, but we're friends. So friends look out for each other. So of course I'm biased to him. So I think, but I think if you look at it rationally, I think there is that sentiment going on right now. A lot of people who have not favored Dato' Najib before now has changed to favoring him, probably because of his policy for the 9 years that he was a prime minister. Things were good and the economy was going great, and a lot of policy that people like. And then he has also proof of his competency to manage the government. So this is why I think the positive sentiment towards Dato' Najib and Bosku is coming back and making its round at the moment. So yeah, I'm biased. I support him. You know, if people want him, I mean, yeah, good.
Yeah, Dr. Oh, you have anything to say on that Bosku?
Well, I also serve Bosku. I was, his political secretary during the first 2 years of his administration. Of course, Bosku is at least economically extremely competent. I have listened to him speaking to Christine Lagarde, the former French finance minister, and then IMF managing director, and now I think European Central Bank managing director, and so on, right? And the kind of economic terms that they threw at each other, it's really out of this world. So he does have a very good grasp of the at least the economic needs and developments of the country. Of course, since he stepped down, I think he also took the effort of, he must have a very good research and PR team. I mean, working for him, I follow his Telegram every day. There are at least 20, sometimes 50 postings and so on. Of course, most of those are done by the PR and research team. But the fact that he is willing to expand effort in doing so, it's quite amazing, because you don't see, for example, Anwar Ibrahim, who is the official leader of the opposition, doing similar things, right? But still, in order for him to sort of, in a sense, resurrect himself in politics, those somehow he needs to, solve those pending and ongoing court cases, because otherwise, in this country, we are, like in Israel, Bibi had all these corruption cases, and yet he could still soldier on for more than a decade, right? But in this country, we somehow, I think we have a fetish for, politicians supposedly should be clean and everything. So I'm not saying he's not clean, just that, people are this kind of fetish. So until such time, those court cases are somehow settled, I think it's quite difficult for him to make a political comeback realistically.
Okay, there's actually a lot of comments, and this one I think purposely says to Dato Sri Zahid Hamidi, do not forget the name of Isham Jalil, the candidate PIU 15. The grassroots of UMNO, what a credible leaders who can provide benefit to the people and the country instead of playing the chestnut politics that UMNO is facing now. I think, Mr. Isham, you have a lot of fans here today, because I keep on looking at the comments. They want you to become the next candidate. So before we end our online talks, a live talk tonight, so are you going to be a candidate in the coming 15 GE 15?
I don't know. I leave that to the leadership.
Okay.
You need to pull a 天窗. You need to. Yeah.
Thank you
Okay.
for the support, by the way. I'm very honored for it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think later maybe you can glance through all the comments. It's really a lot of comments. They ask you to come out to compete as a candidate in the coming
Thank you.
GE 15 elections. Okay,
Thank you.
thanks for two speakers today. I think we spent 2 hours. The live a very informative, a lot of information is being given to our audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxine. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye for
Thank you.
all. Thank you,
Yeah,
Dr.
nice to
Bye.